The celestial pavilion floated like a jewel against the darkness of space, its crystalline walls reflecting the light of 3 distant suns. Inside, the air shimmered with 100 different atmospheres, each section carefully controlled to accommodate the various species that dined there. The restaurant was famous across 12 sectors, a place where the galaxy's most powerful beings came to see and be seen. Sarah Chun moved between the tables with practiced grace, her simple black uniform a stark contrast to the elaborate garments worn by the patrons around her. She carried a tray balanced perfectly on one hand, navigating to the crowded dining floor without disturbing a single guest. Her dark hair was pulled back neatly, and her face showed the kind of calm that came from 2 years of dealing with the most demanding customers in the known galaxy. She had never planned to work in space. Back on Earth, Sarah had been studying medicine, dreaming of becoming a doctor like her father. But then her mother had fallen ill, and the treatments were expensive. Too expensive. The debts had piled up quickly, crushing her family beneath their weight. So Sarah had done what thousands of other young humans had done in recent years. She had left Earth and taken a job among the stars, where the pay was better and humans were still something of a curiosity. The celestial pavilion paid well, but it demanded perfection. The owners were Vexari, a species whose entire culture revolved around hierarchy and order. They saw humans as useful because of their adaptability and their need for work, but they did not see them as equals. Sarah had learned this within her first week, when her supervisor had made it clear that humans were employed for their novelty, nothing more. Around her, the restaurant hummed with conversation in a dozen languages. At one table, a group of Threen merchants clicked and whistled, their iridescent shells catching the light. At another, a Paxian diplomat entertained guests with stories, her forearms gesturing dramatically. The floor itself was a wonder, made of some material that adjusted its texture and temperature based on the species walking across it. Everything about the celestial pavilion was designed to impress, to remind visitors that they were somewhere special. Sarah delivered her current order to a table of Zenti traders, who barely acknowledged her presence. She was used to that. To most of the galaxy, service workers were invisible. She collected their payment chip, smiled politely, and moved back toward the kitchen area. Chun. The sharp voice belonged to her supervisor, a tall Vexari named Krishna. His blue-green skin was patterned with marks that indicated his rank within a species' complex social structure. He looked down at Sarah with his large, unblinking eyes. Section 7 needs attention. VIP arrival. Sarah glanced at the assignment board. Section 7 was the most prestigious area of the restaurant, reserved for royalty and high-level officials. Her stomach tightened slightly. VIP assignments were always stressful, but they also meant better tips. Tips that would help clear her family's debts faster. Understood, she said simply. Krishna's mouth parts twisted into what might have been a smile. The Krell Emperor Exathun has honored us with his presence tonight. Do try not to embarrass our establishment, human. Sarah felt the weight of his words. The Krell Dominion was one of the oldest and most powerful empires in the galaxy. They had been traveling between stars when humans were still figuring out agriculture. Emperor Exathun himself was legendary, a ruler who had held power for 300 years through a combination of cunning and intimidation. He was also known for something else, his terrible temper. She watched as other staff members whispered nervously, careful to stay away from Section 7. No one wanted to serve the Emperor's table. The last server who had displeased him had been banned from working on any Krell control station, which meant losing access to nearly a quarter of the galaxy's trade routes. Sarah checked her tablet, reviewing what she knew about Krell biology and customs. They required high temperatures, preferred their food living or recently killed, and considered eye contact from servants to be an insult. She had served Krell before, but never royalty, and certainly never the Emperor himself. As she walked towards Section 7, Sarah passed by the restaurant's main viewport. Through it, she could see Earth in the distance, a small blue that seemed impossibly far away. Her mother was down there, hopefully recovering. Her father was working double shifts at the hospital. Her younger brother was trying to keep up with his studies. They were all counting on her. She took a deep breath, straightened her uniform, and approached the Emperor's table. Whatever happened next, she would face it the same way she faced everything else, with professionalism, dignity, and the quiet strength that her grandmother had taught her. In a galaxy full of ancient empires and powerful beings, Sarah Chun had only one advantage. She had nothing left to lose by being honest. Emperor Exathuan dominated Section 7 like a storm cloud ready to break. He was massive, even for a Krell, his scaled body rising nearly 8 feet tall when seated. His 6 eyes were arranged in 2 rows across his broad face, each one gleaming with an intelligence that had guided an empire for centuries. His scales were deep purple, almost black, marked with golden patterns that indicated his royal bloodline. Around him sat 12 members of his court, all silent and watchful. Sarah approached the table with her tablet ready, her eyes respectfully lowered. "Your Majesty, welcome to the Celestial Pavilion. It is our honor to serve you this evening." One of the Emperor's eyes focused on her, while the others scanned the room. "You are human," he said, his voice like grinding stones. It was not a question. "Yes, Your Majesty." "How primitive." "Very well. Bring me the Vexarian fire root, prepared at 300 degrees, with living sand mites." Immediately, Sarah made notes on her tablet. The order was unusual, but not impossible. "Of course, Your Majesty. May I confirm you would like the traditional preparation, or did I ask your questions?" Exathuan's voice rose slightly. His court members shifted uncomfortably. "Bring what I ordered." Sarah bowed and retreated to the kitchen. She placed the order carefully, specifying every detail. The kitchen staff worked quickly, afraid of disappointing the Emperor. Within 15 minutes, Sarah carried the dish back to the table, the special heat-resistant plate glowing with warmth. She placed it before the Emperor with practiced precision. Exathuan stared at it for a long moment, then pushed it away violently. The plate skidded across the table, stopping just before it fell. "This is cold," he announced loudly. Sarah's tablet showed the temperature clearly, exactly 300 degrees as requested, but she said nothing, simply nodding. "I apologize, Your Majesty. I will have the kitchen prepare another immediately. See that you do, human, and this time tell him to do it properly." The second dish arrived, this time at 320 degrees. Sarah had personally watched the chef measure it twice. She placed it before the Emperor, careful to show no emotion. Exathuan took one bite and spat it onto the floor. Several nearby diners stopped eating to watch. "Too hot. Are all humans this incompetent?" Around the restaurant, conversations died. Sarah felt dozens of eyes on her. She glanced at the Emperor's companions, who were eating identical dishes without complaint. Their plates were empty, clearly satisfied with their meals. "My sincere apologies, Your Majesty. What temperature would you prefer? I told you 300 degrees. Can your primitive brain not remember simple numbers?" Sarah prepared a third dish, this time at exactly 298 degrees, just slightly under the original request. She brought it out with a fresh selection of garnishes, hoping to please him. Exathuan did not even taste it. He simply looked at the plate and shook his massive head. "The presentation is offensive. Take it away." This continued for an hour. Every dish Sarah brought was wrong. Too hot, too cold, too colorful, not colorful enough. The sand mites were too active, then too still. The garnish was placed incorrectly. The plate itself was the wrong shade of silver. With each complaint, the Emperor's voice grew louder, more aggressive. Other patrons whispered among themselves, some looking sympathetic, others simply uncomfortable. Sarah noticed something else, too. Between his outbursts, Exon watched her carefully. He was testing her, pushing to see when she would break, when she would cry or beg or show fear. She had seen this before in other difficult customers, though never at this scale. Finally, Sarah brought out a dish that had been prepared by the head chef himself, a Vexari master with 40 years of experience. It was perfect by every measurable standard, prepared exactly according to the Emperor's most recent specifications, which he had changed 3 times. She placed it before him, her hand steady. Exathuan stared at it. Then he stood, his enormous form rising above the table. His 6 eyes all focused on Sarah at once, and when he spoke, his voice echoed to the entire restaurant. "This is wrong." He slammed one massive hand on the table, making the plates jump. You incompetent, worthless creature. You humans are nothing but jumped-up primitives, barely evolved enough to walk upright. You cannot even serve a simple meal without failing at every turn. The restaurant had gone completely silent. Even the background music seemed to fade. Every being in the room watched as the Emperor towered over the small human woman. "Get on your knees and apologize." Exathuan roared. "Grovel before me, and perhaps I will not have you banned from every station in this sector." Behind Sarah, she heard footsteps. Kreshna was rushing over, ready to throw her at the Emperor's feet if needed. The guards around Exathuan moved closer, their hands near their weapons. The message was clear: obey or suffer consequences. Sarah stood perfectly still, her tablet held loosely in one hand. Everyone waited for her to collapse, to beg, to cry. That was what happened when an emperor commanded it. Instead, Sarah took a slow, deliberate breath. Then she looked up, meeting all 6 of the emperor's eyes directly, and began to speak. Sarah's voice cut through the silence like a blade, calm and clear. "Your Majesty, I apologize that our service has not met your expectations." She did not look away from those 6 burning eyes. Around the restaurant, people held their breath. No one spoke to an emperor this way, especially not a human, especially not a servant. But Sarah was not finished. "However, I must respectfully point out something." She kept her voice level, professional, as if she were simply discussing the weather. "In the past hour, you have ordered 7 dishes. Each one was prepared exactly as you specified, yet each one was rejected." Exathuan's scales darkened with rage, but Sarah continued before he could interrupt. "Your first order requested 300 degrees. When served at 300 degrees, you said it was cold. Your second order, prepared at 320 degrees, you called too hot. Your third order, at 298 degrees, you rejected without tasting." She gestured toward his companions. "Your guests have eaten identical meals without complaint. In fact, they have eaten everything placed before them." A few of the Emperor's court members shifted uncomfortably. One of them stared very intently at his empty plate. Sarah's grandmother had taught her many things before she left Earth. One lesson stood out now. When you have nothing left to lose, the only thing remaining is your dignity. Never give that away, not to anyone. On Earth, we have a saying, Sarah continued, her voice carrying across the silent restaurant. If you meet one difficult person in a day, you met a difficult person. If everyone you meet is difficult, then you are the difficult person. Someone gasped. It might have been Kreshna. Sarah did not look to check. "I have worked in this establishment for 2 years, Your Majesty. I have served guests from over 300 different species. I have learned 47 cultural protocols to ensure I do not accidentally offend anyone. I have memorized dietary requirements for 93 different biological categories. I have studied temperature preferences, religious restrictions, and social customs." She held up her tablet, showing the detailed notes she had taken throughout the evening. "Your specifications changed 3 times for each dish. First you wanted traditional preparation, then you wanted modern fusion, then you wanted ancient ceremonial style. Your temperature preferences contradicted your earlier statements by as much as 50 degrees. Your complaints about presentation were different each time, making it impossible to learn from previous mistakes." The Emperor's mouth opened, but no sound came out. He seemed shocked that she was still speaking. "I have never had a complaint upheld against me in 2 years, Sarah said, and now there was something harder in her voice, something like steel wrapped in silk. "Not one. I have served 3 ambassadors during their molting season. I have served Paxian warlords with very specific honor requirements. I have even served a Zenti queen who required her food touched only by beings born under specific star alignments." She lowered her tablet and looked directly at the Emperor, all pretense of submission gone from her posture. "Perhaps, Your Majesty, the problem tonight is not that humans are primitive. Perhaps the problem is that you expected me to be too afraid to tell you the truth." The silence that followed was absolute. Somewhere in the restaurant, a glass made a tiny sound as someone set it down too carefully. Sarah set her tablet on the table between them. "I will not get on my knees. You may have me fired." You may ban me from this station and every station in your empire. You may make it impossible for me to work anywhere in this sector of the galaxy." Her voice remained steady, though her heart hammered in her chest. "But I will not grovel before you and pretend that your behavior tonight has been worthy of a leader of your reputation." Kreshna made a strangled sound behind her. The Emperor's guards moved closer, their weapons humming with barely contained energy. But Sarah was not done. Her grandmother's voice echoed in her memory, stronger now. "The only thing they can never take from you is your choice in how you face them." "You rule an empire that has existed for 10,000 years, Sarah said quietly. "You command fleets that could destroy planets. You have wealth beyond measure and power beyond imagining. And yet you came here tonight and spent an hour trying to make one waitress cry." She paused, letting that sink in. "I have to ask, Your Majesty, why? What does an emperor have to prove to someone like me?" The question hung in the air like smoke. Exathwin stood frozen, his 6 eyes locked on the small human who had just challenged him in front of hundreds of witnesses. His claws flexed. His breathing was heavy and loud. And then something unexpected happened. A sound began from the other side of the restaurant, a slow, rhythmic clicking. The Threen ambassador was making his species sign of approval, their form of applause. Within seconds, others joined. Chirps, hums, even some human clapping. The sound grew and grew until it filled the entire space. They were not applauding the Emperor. They were applauding her. The applause continued, washing over the restaurant like a wave. Sarah stood perfectly still, her face carefully neutral, though inside her heart raced so fast she thought everyone must be able to hear it. She had just done something incredibly stupid or incredibly brave, and she was not sure which. Emperor Exathwin remained frozen, his massive form towering over her. His scales had shifted through several colors, from the deep purple of rage to something lighter, something that might have been surprise. His 6 eyes moved across the restaurant, taking the crowd of beings who were openly showing support for a human waitress who had challenged him. The political calculation was clear on his face. If he punished her now, he would look weak, unable to handle criticism from someone so far beneath his station. Every species in the galaxy would hear about how a mighty emperor had crushed a defenseless worker for telling the truth. They would whisper that he could not control his temper, that age had made him petty and small. But if he did nothing, he would look weak in a different way. An emperor who allowed servants to speak to him this way would invite disrespect from all sides. Sarah watched these thoughts play across his expression. She had gambled everything on one assumption, that Emperor Exathwin had not ruled for 3 centuries by being merely a tyrant. Tyrants were overthrown. True rulers knew when to bend. The Emperor's guards waited for his command, their weapons ready. Kreshna stood behind Sarah, probably already composing the message that would terminate her employment. The other diners had stopped their applause now, waiting to see what would happen next. Then Emperor Exathwin did something that no one expected. He laughed. It started as a low rumble deep in his chest, then grew into a booming sound that echoed off the crystalline walls. He threw his massive head back and laughed like Sarah had told the funniest joke he had heard in years. 10,000 years, he roared, still laughing. 10,000 years my people have walked among the stars, and it takes a human child to tell an emperor he is being a fool. He sat back down heavily, the chair groaning under his weight. His eyes, all 6 of them, focused on Sarah with something new in them, something that might have been respect. "Look at you," he said, his voice still loud but no longer angry. "You stand there with nothing. No weapons, no power, no army behind you. I could end your career with a word. I could make your life very difficult with a single command, and yet you looked me in the eyes and spoke truth." He shook his great head. "Do you know how rare that is, girl? Do you know how many beings in my own court would have the courage to do what you just did?" He gestured at his companions, who suddenly became very interested in their plates. "These fools agree with everything I say. They laugh at my jokes whether they're funny or not. They tell me I am wise and just and perfect." His voice dropped lower. "They are useless to me because of it." Exathwin leaned forward, his massive form casting a shadow over Sarah. "Your species has been in the galaxy for what, 50 years? A heartbeat. Nothing. You have no great fleets, no ancient history among the stars. Many see you as weak because you are young." He paused. "But you just reminded me that youth and weakness are not the same thing at all." Sarah finally allowed herself to breathe normally. She was not sure what was happening, but at least she was not being arrested. "Tell me, human," the Emperor said, his voice now almost conversational. "What is your name?" "Sarah Chun, your Majesty." "Sarah Chun." He repeated it slowly, as if tasting each syllable. "Very well, Sarah Chun. You have made your point. You will not grovel, and I find that I do not want you to." He waved one clawed hand. "Bring me one meal. Not what I ordered, not what you think I want. Bring me what you would serve to someone you respect. Something honest. Can you do that?" Sarah nodded slowly. "Yes, your Majesty." "Then do so, and we will see if you are as good at choosing food as you are at choosing your words." Sarah bowed and walked toward the kitchen, her legs somehow still working despite feeling like water. Behind her, she heard the restaurant come back to life. Conversation starting again, though now everyone was talking about what they had just witnessed. In the kitchen, she leaned against the wall for just a moment, allowing herself to shake. She had survived, more than survived. But now she faced a new challenge. What do you serve an emperor who has just admitted he wants honesty? She thought her grandmother's dumplings, simple and perfect, made with love and care. Sometimes the most profound truths were the simplest ones. Sarah began to prepare the meal. Sarah worked in the kitchen with steady hands, blocking out the whispers of the staff around her. She pulled ingredients from her personal locker, things she kept for the rare quiet moments when she made herself a meal from home. Flour, water, a bit of oil, vegetables she had bought from the earth import section of the station, ground meat that was close enough to what her grandmother had used. She mixed and kneaded, her hands moving through motions she had learned as a child. Her grandmother had made these dumplings every Sunday, filling the small apartment with steam and the smell of ginger and garlic. Food made with honesty tastes different, her grandmother had said. You cannot fake it. People know. The kitchen staff watched her in silence. Even the head chef, who normally would have stopped anyone from using the kitchen for personal recipes, said nothing. Everyone knew what had just happened in the dining room. Everyone knew that Sarah's next action would determine whether she left this station as a legend or a cautionary tale. 30 minutes later, Sarah carried a simple bamboo steamer to Section 7. Inside were 12 dumplings, their thin skin slightly translucent, showing the filling within. Steam rose from them, carrying the scent of home across the restaurant. She placed the steamer before Emperor Exethun without ceremony. "These are called dumplings, your Majesty. My grandmother taught me to make them. They are simple, honest food. Nothing fancy, nothing designed to impress. Just something that has fed my family for generations." The Emperor looked at the dumplings for a long moment. His court members watched nervously, unsure if this simple earth food was an insult or a gift. Then Exethun picked up one dumpling with his clawed fingers, surprisingly delicate for such a large being, and bit into it. He chewed slowly. The restaurant had gone quiet again, everyone watching. Sarah stood with her hands clasped, waiting. Exethun finished a dumpling and reached for another, then another. He ate all 12 without speaking, without complaint, without even looking up. When the steamer was empty, he sat back and closed all 6 of his eyes. 300 years, he said quietly. I have eaten meals prepared by the finest chefs in 100 systems. I have tasted dishes that cost more than most beings earn in a lifetime. I have consumed food so rare that wars were fought over them. He opened his eyes and looked at Sarah. And this simple food from a young species on a backwater planet is the most honest meal I have had in decades. He stood, and this time his full height seemed less threatening and more dignified. You asked me why I came here tonight and spent an hour trying to make you cry. He paused. The truth? Because I am old and powerful and surrounded by people who fear me. I wanted to see if anyone in this galaxy still had the spine to stand up to power. I have been testing servers at establishments across the sector for months. You are the first who passed. Sarah felt her eyes widen. It had all been a test. Do not look so surprised, Exodin said, something that might have been amusement in his voice. Did you think an emperor survives 3 centuries without learning how to identify those with true character? He pulled a small chip from his robes and placed it on the table. This is for your service. I believe it will be adequate. He turned to leave, his guards falling into formation around him. Then he paused and looked back at Sarah one more time. A leader must surround himself with those brave enough to tell him the truth. Sarah Chun, if you ever tire of serving food, the Krell Dominion could use someone who serves honesty instead. You will be welcome in my court. Then he was gone, sweeping out a restaurant with his entourage behind him. The moment the door closed, the restaurant erupted. People rushed to Sarah's table, wanted to talk to her, to congratulate her, to simply be near the human who had faced down an emperor. Sarah picked up the payment chip, exited, and had left. Her tablet showed the amount, and she nearly dropped it. It was enough to pay off her family's entire debt. All of it, every single credit they owed. She thought about the emperor's offer. A position in the Krell court would be prestigious, powerful, probably comfortable. But as she looked around the restaurant, at the other servers working their tables, at Kreshna, who was staring at her with shock, she realized something. She did not want power. She did not want to be special. She just wanted to work with dignity and be treated with respect. 3 months later, Sarah's family sent her a message. The debts were paid, not by the chip from the emperor, which Sarah had sent home immediately, but by an additional anonymous payment that had covered the remaining balance and all future medical costs. The message included no name, just a simple note. A leader pays his debts. Sarah had smiled and deleted the message from the Krell Dominion that had arrived the same day, once again offering her a position in the Emperor's court. The next morning, she returned to work at the Celestial Pavilion. Kreshna, surprisingly, had promoted her to senior server and actually said please when giving her assignments. Other staff members treated her differently now, with respect rather than dismissal. But the biggest change was in the customers. Word had spread across the galaxy about the human waitress who had stood up to an emperor. Now, when difficult patrons came in, other servers would whisper, "Sarachin works here," and somehow those customers became easier to manage. One evening, a young Threen diplomat was being rude to a new server, insulting her and making impossible demands. Sarah quietly walked over and stood beside her co-worker, saying nothing, just being present. The Threen looked up, recognized Sarah, and immediately apologized. As Sarah walked back to her station, she thought about what her grandmother had told her long ago. Dignity is not something someone gives you. It is something you carry inside yourself. No one can take it unless you give it away. She had faced an emperor and kept her dignity. She had spoken truth to power and survived. But more importantly, she had reminded the galaxy of something they had forgotten. That respect should not be reserved only for the powerful, and that even the smallest voice deserves to be heard. In a galaxy of ancient empires and beings who had walked among the stars for millennia, sometimes the most revolutionary act was simply treating everyone with dignity and expecting the same in return. Sarah Chun had learned that lesson from her grandmother in a small apartment on Earth, and she had taught it to an emperor in a restaurant among the stars. The galaxy, slowly, was beginning to listen.